have in my hands the number one selling book of all time, the Bible. And in this Bible, there are stories. Some of the stories are literally true, and a lot of the stories are stories to bring about a point. These are all stories about the lives of various people and how this presence of Yahweh, interesting how Yahweh, the name they gave for God, means I am who I am, the verb to be. That God is tied in with the very essence of being. And I am, and we, human beings, you hear the present tense of that? You know, you're not a human has-been, and you're not a human becoming. You're a human being. And Yahweh, I am, all present moment. So get a sense of that. There's something very, very important about our ability to be present. Like right now as we're all sitting here. Life is always and only now. It's not last week and it's not next week. It's right now. And this Bible talks about all these stories of how this presence of the divine was involved in the people's lives as they woke up to the consciousness of this presence and how it impacted on their lives. Because this really ultimately is about what? It's not about all these other people. It's about us. We're the people that they're talking about. And the call for each one of us of this continual transformation. And again, a lot of times when we think of transformation, it isn't necessarily becoming someone. It's more of letting go of all that is not who we are. So it's funny when I look at this Bible, I see here my mother put her name in this, and I crack up laughing because her mother told her, put your name in the book because that way you know it's yours, and if anybody you lend it out to anybody, you can say, look, see, it's got my name in it. And it's so funny how things get passed down. My mom, who now is in a nursing home and has Alzheimer's, I remember her telling me a story when I was a kid about how she went to the hospital to see her grandmother, and she was there telling her father, like, why are we here? Why are we here? She doesn't even know we're here. And her father said to her, but we know we're here. And I'll never forget that. So when I go to see my mother, I have to remind her who I am to her. I say, I'm your son. Oh yeah, how you doing? But she had a great life, great person, wonderful woman. And it cracks me up. She's got all the little tabs in here. Here's Luke, here's Ephesians, here's, she got that all down in there. So I think of like the family growing up now. In my family, my older brother was adopted, and then I was born to my mom and dad, and then they adopted 2 more children. So I wanted to share a little story of, we hear these passages about the blind see and the lame walk and the healing. These are those who are in captivity are set free, to be set free. And they're all stories. The Old Testament, the weak and the faint of heart will be strong, and they will not grow weary. These are all stories about wholeness. God wanting all of us to become whole and to be healed. And so a story of my sister who was adopted and then returned and then adopted by my parents. And she had problems. She had learning problems, learning disabilities, didn't understand things, cognitive functioning. And back in that day, now I was 2 years older than her, but significantly different, And while I'd like to say I was a good brother, I let her win at Monopoly and things like let her watch her TV shows or something like that. But I was also like a typical older brother. She's my sister, so we'd be driving in the car, I'd be in the back seat, my parents would be driving, and if my mom made a left, I would lean over this way and push her into the door. I go, I can't help it. And then if they made a right, I'd hit my other sister with it. Or we'd be watching Bonanza, and I'd be, listen, let's see, I'm going to count to 10, and see if you could run upstairs, get me a package of Pop-Tarts, and see if you can come down in 10 seconds. So she's running there, 7, 8, 9, and she's, you know what I mean? And that wasn't right. But it was a typical brother, right? But my sister was mocked out, back in the late 60s, early 70s. She would be like mocked out and didn't understand. I can remember her getting a little fire chief, friend of a fire chief badge, and she wore it for like a month. She wanted to wear it to bed. It made her feel special. She got this badge. And I'll never forget this. She had her period. And she said to my mother, "Does this mean I'm normal? Am I normal, Mommy?" "Yeah, you're normal. And everybody loves you." And we did love her. She grew up in our family. But I want to tell you, there's nothing like getting love from outside the family. And we had this neighbor, Tony Russo, who actually was a crooner. He was right in there with he didn't make it, but he was like Frank Sinatra, all those guys, Perry Como. He was fantastic. And he did ultimately get a job for NBC. He lived across the street from us. And he was just a great guy, And he took my sister on. This was his friend. And and you know how the Italians have spaghetti meatballs on Sunday afternoon, right? Yeah. Gotta go over. I'm going over, Tony invited me over for noodles. We're having noodles, Tony and I. And she'd go over there with Tony Russo and his family, and they would honor her and treat her special like a little queen. And it made all the difference in the world to her. It's a great example of her being captive by that self-esteem, by being mistreated, by not feeling normal. And Tony Russo set her free to feel great about herself. And yet, we all have that too, don't we? We all have been hurt. We've all had times where we've been disappointed or betrayed, maybe rejected, and we have this hurt. Where is that hurt right now for all of you? Is the hurt behind you? Or it doesn't interrupt how you love and how you live, how you see, how you walk? Or is the hurt before you, not resolved? And this hurt impacts the way you perceive and the way you love. Remember, what's that line? Love as if you've never been hurt. Are we doing that? Are we loving and are we free as if we've never been hurt? But we can hold on to that, right? Where is your past? Is your past in the past? Or is your past, are you carrying it? Oftentimes we get hurt and we draw conclusions. That's get a narrative going about, let me tell you about that, right? And it's funny, somebody gave me this video about, people who have been pronounced clinically dead and brought back these near-death experiences. Apparently there's like 20 million of them. that are recorded. And they all so often say the same thing. Where this woman, she was a doctor, her life had flashed before her, and times when she had been really hurt and really betrayed, somehow in this experience, she wound up having like a compassion for the people who hurt her. You know, there's a book called Hurt People Hurt People. So when you think of anybody who's ever hurt you in your life, they're really hurting you out of their own hurt. People who really feel good about themselves and are happy and loving, they don't hurt anybody. People who hurt people are people who are hurt. And somehow there was this experience where she was able to look at those hurts in such a different way that when she came back to her body, she was completely free of the people who had hurt her. Years ago, and it was funny, I saw this show when I was probably like 35 or whatever, and it was a show about people in their 50s who were going through their life, who got divorced, bankruptcy, heartaches, different losses, failures, different things. And I'm like, wow, those guys are old, 50. That was 10 years ago for me. So this one guy made a great line, great comment, and I'll never forget it. He said, I've come to realize by being interviewed and being a part of this study that my life up to this point has been my life up to this point, and I have to embrace it. My life up to this point has been my life up to this point, and I have to embrace it. I have to hug my life. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Everything. I have to say yes to my life. You have to say yes to your life. Everything that has happened to you in your life up to this point has happened to you up to this point in your life. You have to say yes to everything that has ever happened to you. Well, you don't have to. You could continue to be angry and bitter and hold on to it and have our lives compromised. Or we could say yes. You know, we could kick this down the road. I don't want anything to do with it. Or I could hug it and embrace it. I just love that line. What's your relationship with reality? I'm completely against it. What's your relationship with your life up to this point? How can you be against it? My life up to this point has been my life up to this point, and I must embrace it. I have to learn from the heartaches, the hurts, the betrayals, the disappointments. I've got to do that to be free. This is what Jesus is talking about. This is the consciousness of the gospel. To be alive. To be alive now. Now, we can make a choice. It's a choice. I was reading something about quotes and things like that, and there was a quote that says, inner joy is checking out the landscape while you're on a detour. And the other day, I'm driving along and I'm running a little late, detour. Now, normally you'd be like, I can't believe that, you'd be against the detour, I don't like detours, I don't know where I'm going on the detour. They don't even put the darn signs out the right way. And I said, you know what? I'm going to check out the landscape in the detour. I see these little homes, and they got the Christmas lights, and the kids are getting ready for school, things like that. It was a very nice detour. It was a choice. It was a choice. Now that's a little example, but if you think about our lives, it's a choice. We can let go and be free, or we could hold on. It's a choice. Now the beauty of it is, not only do we have a choice, But we have the power of the risen Christ inside of us to give us a power beyond our choice, beyond ourselves, to enable us to do this, to be set free, to be opened up so the blind can see and the lame can walk and the deaf can hear. Freedom to the captivity of our hurts and our wounds. So you have next to you paper and a pen, and we're going to ask you to write down where you've been hurt, where are some of the experiences that you have had that have kept you back, kept you a little captive. And then when you're ready, come up, and we're going to put it in this pot here, this bowl, and we're going to burn them. Does anybody need more cards? So, front and back, and then we're going to burn them and offer them up. Write down like where you've been hurt, where things that maybe like, what is there any part of your past that's not in your past, that's ever in front of you, where you've been hurt, things that you haven't let go of, people that you haven't forgiven. Write their name down. So now I just want to hear this one last thing. So it's a choice. We have a choice to be set free. And we have the power of the risen Christ inside of us to do this. So not for nothing, we have no excuse.